When I'm teaching on generosity, I often quote Margaret Thatcher, who said, "No one would remember the Good Samaritan if he only had good intentions." He had money as well. And if you remember the story of the Good Samaritan, the Pharisees walked past a wounded man, and the Good Samaritan comes along, picks up the wounded man, takes him back to the inn, and asks the innkeeper to care for him, care for his wounds, feed him, house him, and leaves him money to do so, and says, "When I come back through, if there is need of more money, I will leave more money." It takes money sometimes it takes money to cause things to move forward. If you want to be generous, you can have good intentions and say, "Oh, I really wish I could help that. That's a good cause. I wish I could." But if you put yourself in a position to be generous financially, you've lived like no one else so that later you can live and give like no one else. Then when a need comes across your path, something that you're passionate about particularly, you can do something about it. And you can write a check. And sometimes you can do it with great flair and great style, like happened yesterday. If you didn't hear, there was a horrible fire in Paris, and the Cathedral of Notre-Dame, which I was able to visit a couple years ago, portions of it burned, and everyone was holding their breath that they could get the fire put out before it was a total loss, obviously. They lost the spire and some other things, but it's not only it's been there since, 1163, I think it was built, something like that. And so it is not only a Christian chapel, a Catholic chapel, but it is also an icon on the world stage, and certainly on the stage of Paris. And so everyone was kind of holding their breath watching this. 2 French families have already come out and pledged $339 million between the 2 of them to help with the rebuilding. And I'll just read from Washington Post here, or Washington Times rather. One of France's richest families promptly stepped up to calls from the country's president to help rebuild the cathedral, pledged $113 million. Shortly thereafter, another wealthy family offered another $226 million to the restoration fund. And one of the families is the LVHM company, which I think is the largest company in France, if I recall. And LVHM is Louis Vuitton, LV. And that's where the initial money was made with the company. They still own that brand. They also own a bazillion other brands. Hennessy Cognac is an example. Several other brands that are uniquely French, and some around the world. It's a huge company. But the family made their wealth in business. And then are, the one pledging $226 million back into this. The irony is the French generally like socialism, but capitalism is what's writing this check. Because these are companies that made money selling, the initial money was made selling extremely expensive purses. Hello. And evil rich people bought those purses, of course. So, could have happened in the Ramsey family, I'm just saying. But we might have funded part of that indirectly, I'm just saying. But it's a big deal. And I think it's interesting to stop and say, the French president called on people to help rebuild, to help with this restoration. Immediately, 2 wealthy families, the evil 1%ers, right? These poor, evil, rich people are the first ones to write checks, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars. So obviously they're not evil. And obviously they're generous. And obviously they care not only about the faith aspect of this, I suspect, I don't know that for sure, but they definitely care about France, and they care about Paris, and they care about this icon on the world stage. And so congratulations for your generosity. And putting it out there to inspire the rest of us. Most of us can't write a $100 million or $200 million check. But it reminds us all to write the $100 check. Or hand somebody a couple of Benjamin Franklins that's down on their luck and help them. And you can't do that if you're trying to pay your light bill because you're out of control. So you live like no one else so that later you can live and give like no one else. Now, you will be criticized. There's only one way to avoid criticism: do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. And so you can count on being criticized as you become successful, as you build wealth. But then you're in a position to do wonderful things like that. And I suspect some of France's wealthiest families don't really care what you think. They don't really care what you think about how they made their money. They're probably not concerned about your opinion. They didn't write this check for that. They weren't motivated by popularity. This is not a reality show. This is life. And that's what happens when the larger you get in business, the larger you get on the stage of life, the more some pissant will take a pot shot at you. And that happens all the time. It's just part of it. And you just go, well, as if I was taking a poll. I'm not taking a poll. We're doing this. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Now, some of you are offended when I say that on radio. Turn the channel. This is the Dave Ramsey Show. And I'll be continuing to say what I want to say. And if you wanted to hear what somebody else said, you should have listened to a different show. And if your opinion matters, get you a show. That's how this works. And so my encouragement is to be successful. Go be what God called you to be. Go live on less than you make so that later you can live and give like no one else. Pay a price to win. And then ignore the haters when you win. And move on. Because they will be there. Some of them will be jealousy from the old neighborhood. Some of them will be envy from inside your own family. Some of them will be left-wingers who are mad about everything. Some of them will be something, right? They all come from somewhere. And everybody's got an opinion about you the more you have succeeded. So congratulations to these wonderful, wealthy families in France. Thank you for doing something wonderful with your wealth. And really encouraging the rest of us in our generosity journey to be outrageously generous. See, I got this weird idea that if enough of you got out of debt and enough of you built wealth, you and I, we the people, could outgive the government and make them irrelevant. How fun would that be?